On my son's wedding day, my dress was missing. My daughter-in-law had thrown it away, so her mother would stand out in the photos. They had no idea I had just rewritten my $2.4 million inheritance. But let me start from the beginning, because the morning that changed everything began like any other wedding day should have. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. in the guest room of the hotel where David and Ashley had insisted I stay. Not the bridal suite floor, mind you. That was reserved for Ashley's family. I was 2 floors down in what they called the family accommodations, though I was beginning to wonder exactly which family they meant. The excitement should have been overwhelming. My only son, my David, was getting married. I had dreamed of this day since he was little, imagining how I would help him choose his bride, how we would plan together, how proud his father would have been. Richard had passed 3 years ago, and I knew he was watching from somewhere, hoping I would make this day special for our boy. I had chosen my dress months ago. It was a beautiful navy blue with delicate silver embroidery, elegant, but not flashy. I didn't want to upstage anyone. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. Especially not Ashley. I had learned early in their relationship that Ashley preferred to be the center of attention, and as the mother of the groom, I was perfectly content to blend into the background and watch my son's happiness unfold. The dress hung in the closet when I went to sleep. I remember touching the fabric one last time before bed, feeling the soft material between my fingers. It represented so much more than just clothing. It was my way of honoring this milestone, of showing respect for the commitment David and Ashley were making. When I opened the closet that morning, the hanger swayed empty. I stood there for a moment, my coffee mug halfway to my lips, wondering if I was still half asleep. Maybe I had hung it in the bathroom? I checked. The small closet by the door? Empty. Under the bed, behind the curtains, even in the bathroom cabinets. Nothing. My heart started racing. The ceremony was in 4 hours. I called the front desk, thinking maybe housekeeping had moved it, but they had no record of touching anything in my room. I called David's room, but it went straight to voicemail. Of course. He was probably getting ready with his groomsmen. Ashley answered on the 3rd ring when I called her room. Margaret? What's wrong? Her voice had that slightly annoyed edge it got whenever I interrupted her schedule. Ashley, honey, I'm so sorry to bother you, but my dress is missing. I can't find it anywhere, and I was wondering if maybe someone moved it, or if housekeeping— Oh no, that's terrible. Let me come help you look. She arrived 15 minutes later, still in her silk pajamas with her hair in rollers, looking every inch the beautiful bride-to-be. We searched my room together, Ashley making all the right sympathetic noises as we checked every possible hiding place. This is so strange, she said, her brow furrowed in apparent concern. Are you sure you brought it? Yes, I'm positive. I hung it right here last night. Well, maybe we should check the lost and found? Or I could call my mom. She brought an extra dress. Maybe you could borrow something. Something in her tone made me pause. There was a slight eagerness there, barely noticeable, but I had taught high school for 30 years. I knew when someone was performing concern rather than feeling it. Ashley, could you help me check the dumpster area? Maybe it fell somehow when housekeeping was working? Her face went completely still for just a moment, just long enough for me to know. The dumpster? Margaret, that's ridiculous. Why would your dress be in the— Let's just check. We walked down to the service area behind the hotel. Ashley trailed behind me, unusually quiet. When I lifted the lid of the first dumpster, there it was. My beautiful navy dress, crumpled and stained, thrown in with the morning's garbage like it meant nothing at all. I pulled it out with shaking hands. Coffee grounds clung to the silver embroidery. A sauce stain ran down the front. It was completely ruined. I can't believe this, I whispered, holding the dress against my chest. How did this happen? When I turned around, Ashley was standing there with her arms crossed, and the fake concern had vanished from her face completely. I put it there. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? I threw it away, Margaret. I'm sorry, but I had to. I stared at her. This young woman who was about to become my daughter-in-law. This person I had tried so hard to welcome into our family, and I couldn't process what I was hearing. You threw away my dress on purpose. Look, I know it sounds harsh, but you have to understand. My mother flew all the way from Portland for this wedding. She spent a fortune on her dress, and it's absolutely stunning. But when I saw your dress yesterday, I realized you two would be wearing almost the same color. The photos would be ruined. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Navy and midnight blue are practically identical in photos, Margaret. My mother would be devastated if she blended into the background on the most important day of her daughter's life. I'm sure you understand. You're a mother, too. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. She had snuck into my room, stolen my dress, and thrown it in the garbage. And she was standing there explaining it to me like it was a reasonable business decision. Ashley, this is my son's wedding day. And it's my wedding day too. I'm the bride, Margaret. Everything today is about making sure this day is perfect. And sometimes that means making difficult choices. I looked down at the ruined dress in my hands, and something inside me shifted. It wasn't just about the dress. It was about being erased, being deemed unimportant. Being treated like my presence at my own son's wedding was negotiable. David doesn't know about this, does he? Ashley shrugged. David wants me to be happy. That's all that matters to him. The dismissal in her voice was complete. I wasn't a person with feelings or dignity. I was just an obstacle to be managed. I folded the dress carefully, despite the stains, and looked at Ashley. Really looked at her. For the first time, I saw her exactly as she was. I need to find something else to wear. Of course. I'm sure we can figure something out. Maybe something from the hotel gift shop? She was already moving on. The problem solved in her mind. I was the mother of the groom, and I would wear whatever scraps she allowed me to have. As we walked back to the hotel, Ashley chattering about backup plans and quick fixes, I made a decision that would change everything. I just didn't tell her about it yet. Standing in that hotel gift shop, staring at a rack of overpriced tourist t-shirts and generic sundresses, I felt something click into place. This wasn't the first time Ashley had made me disappear. I had just been too willing to make excuses for her to see it clearly. The gift shop clerk, a kind woman in her 50s, took one look at my face and asked if I was all right. When I explained what happened, she disappeared into the back room and returned with a simple black dress. My daughter left this here last month, she said quietly. It's a size 10 and it's yours if you want it. No bride should treat her future mother-in-law like that. I tried to pay her, but she refused. Some things are more important than money, honey. As I changed in the small bathroom, I let myself remember. Really remember. Not the sanitized version I had been telling myself for 2 years, but the truth. It started with the engagement party. Ashley had insisted on planning it herself, which I thought was sweet. David was so busy with work, and she seemed to have such creative ideas. But when I arrived at the restaurant, I discovered my name wasn't on the reservation list. Oh my gosh, Margaret, I'm so sorry, Ashley had gushed, her hand flying to her mouth. I must have forgotten to add you when I updated the guest count. The hostess says they're completely booked, but maybe you could sit at the bar. You could still see everything from there. I spent my son's engagement party perched on a bar stool, watching Ashley's friends and family celebrate at beautifully decorated tables, while I nursed a glass of wine alone. When people asked where the groom's mother was, Ashley would gesture vaguely toward the bar and say, "Oh, Margaret preferred to sit over there. She's more comfortable on her own." Then there was the bridal shower. I had offered to host it at my house, the house where David grew up, with the big backyard and the kitchen that could feed an army. Ashley had smiled sweetly and said she was so grateful, but her sorority sisters had already planned something more intimate. I wasn't invited to that either. It's just going to be a few close friends, Ashley explained when I asked. You know how girls can be. We get so silly and embarrassing. I didn't want you to feel uncomfortable. But I saw the photos on Facebook. 30 women, elaborate decorations, a professional photographer. Ashley's mother was there, front and center, helping open gifts and posing for pictures. In every single photo, she looked like the proudest mother in the world. The dress shopping had been the worst. I had been so excited when Ashley finally invited me to come along. We met at an upscale bridal boutique, and I thought finally I was being included. But when we arrived, Ashley's mother and sister were already there, holding champagne glasses and looking through dress options. They had been there for over an hour. Margaret, Ashley's mother, Linda, had air-kissed me like we were old friends, though she had never made any effort to get to know me. How wonderful that you could join us. Ashley's already tried on 12 dresses. We've been having such a magical morning. I sat in the corner chair, the least comfortable one, while Linda offered opinions and Ashley's sister took photos. When Ashley emerged in what would become her wedding dress, Linda burst into tears. You look like a princess, sweetheart. Your father would be so proud. Ashley's father wasn't dead. He was just in Florida playing golf. But Linda spoke like she was the only mother figure Ashley had ever known. I had raised my hand tentatively. It's beautiful, Ashley. You look absolutely radiant. Ashley had glanced at me in the mirror, smiled politely, and turned back to her mother. Mom, what do you think about the train? Too much? I might as well have been invisible. The worst part was David's reaction whenever I tried to bring up these incidents. He would get that patient, slightly exasperated look that said I was being dramatic. Mom, Ashley's just stressed about the wedding. You know how overwhelming this all is for her. But David, I offered to help with the shower. And she has her own vision, Mom. Can't you just let her have this? It's her special day. Her special day. Always her special day. Never our special day or the family's special day. Just hers. When I suggested we include some of our family traditions in the ceremony, the ring blessing that had been passed down through 4 generations, or the Irish toast Richard's grandfather had written, Ashley had smiled and nodded and said, "We'll definitely consider that." None of them made it into the ceremony. We decided to keep things simple, David explained when I asked. Ashley doesn't want anything too old-fashioned. Old-fashioned. My family's 100-year traditions were old-fashioned, but Ashley's sorority chant during the bouquet toss was perfectly modern. Standing in that hotel bathroom, putting on a stranger's black dress because my own had been thrown away like garbage, I finally saw it all clearly. Ashley hadn't made a series of innocent mistakes or oversights. She had systematically erased me from every important moment leading up to this day. And David had let her. When I emerged from the bathroom, the gift shop clerk squeezed my hand. "You look lovely, dear. Hold your head high today." I walked back toward the elevator, and as the doors closed, I caught my reflection in the polished metal. The woman looking back at me wasn't the excited mother of the groom I had planned to be. She was someone who had been told over and over that she didn't matter. But she was also someone who was done accepting that message. The elevator dinged at my floor, and I walked down the hallway with new purpose. I had a wedding to attend, a son to support, and a decision to make. Ashley thought she had won by throwing away my dress. She had no idea that she had actually set me free. The ceremony was beautiful. I'll give Ashley that. She had impeccable taste when it came to creating the perfect visual story. White roses everywhere, soft lighting, an elegant string quartet. Everything looked exactly like a fairy tale wedding should look. I sat in the 3rd row, not the front row where the mother of the groom traditionally sits, not even the 2nd row, the 3rd row behind Ashley's college roommates and her cousin's children. When I arrived at the venue, there was no usher waiting to escort me to my seat. Ashley's family had their own personal coordinator who fussed over every detail of their arrival, but I wandered into the ceremony space alone, looking for someone to tell me where I belonged. The wedding planner, a harried woman with a clipboard, barely glanced at me when I introduced myself. "Oh, you're David's mother." "Yes, Ashley left specific instructions about your seating." She consulted her notes. "3rd row, aisle seat. She thought you'd be more comfortable there because it's closer to the restrooms." The restrooms. My seating assignment was based on bathroom proximity. I took my seat and watched as Linda, Ashley's mother, was ceremoniously escorted to the front row by Ashley's brother. She wore a stunning midnight blue dress that caught the light beautifully. The exact color Ashley had claimed would clash with mine. Linda looked radiant and important and proud. Everything a mother of the bride should look like on her daughter's wedding day. When the processional music began, I turned to watch my son walk down the aisle with the officiant. David looked so handsome in his tuxedo, so happy and nervous and perfect. For a moment, I forgot about everything else and just felt pure joy watching my boy prepare to start his new life. Then Ashley appeared, and even I had to admit she was breathtaking. Her dress was pure perfection, her veil catching the afternoon light like spun silver. She practically glowed as her father walked her down the aisle. But as she passed my row, Ashley's eyes found mine. Just for a second, she looked directly at me in my stranger's black dress, and she smiled. Not the radiant bride smile she was giving everyone else. This was different, satisfied, triumphant. She had won, and she wanted me to know it. The ceremony itself was lovely. David's vows were heartfelt and sweet, full of promises about partnership and devotion. Ashley's were beautifully written, probably by someone else, all about finding her soulmate and creating their perfect life together. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, there was the traditional pause. I felt dozens of eyes turn toward me, as if everyone expected the difficult mother-in-law to cause a scene. I simply smiled and looked straight ahead. During the reception, the seating chart told the real story. Linda sat at the head table with the wedding party, beaming as she was introduced as the wonderful woman who raised our beautiful bride. I was at table 12, sandwiched between Ashley's great aunt, who was mostly deaf, and a couple I had never met who spent the entire dinner discussing their timeshare in Branson. When the DJ announced the mother-son dance, I felt a flutter of anticipation. This was my moment, the tradition that belonged to me and David. I had been looking forward to this dance since he was little, imagining what song we would choose, How proud I would feel swaying with my grown son to music that meant something to us. David took the microphone before the dance began. "I'd like to say something about the incredible women who shaped my life," he said, and my heart swelled. "First, to Ashley's mom, Linda. Thank you for raising the woman of my dreams. You taught her everything about grace and beauty and strength, and I'm so grateful to have you as my second mother." The crowd murmured appreciatively. Linda dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. "And to my own mother, Margaret. Thank you for, well, thank you for being here today." That was it. Thank you for being here today. Like I was a distant relative who had made the effort to attend, not the woman who had raised him alone after his father died. The song began, and David held out his hand to me. We danced to "My Way" by Frank Sinatra, a song I had never heard him mention in his entire life. It lasted exactly 2 minutes, and then he kissed my cheek and returned to Ashley's side. Linda's dance with Ashley went on for nearly 6 minutes. They danced to "In My Daughter's Eyes," and by the end, half the wedding guests were crying. The photographer took dozens of pictures of their emotional embrace. No one took photos of my dance with David. During dinner, Ashley stood up to give a speech. She thanked everyone for coming, praised the vendors, and shared sweet stories about how she and David had met. "I also want to thank the most important woman in my life," she said, raising her champagne glass. "My mother, Linda, who taught me that a woman can be anything she wants to be. Mom, you're my role model, my best friend, and the reason I know how to love. I hope to be half the mother to my future children that you've been to me." The crowd erupted in applause. Linda stood up, blew Ashley a kiss, and mouthed, "I love you." Ashley had been talking for almost 5 minutes, and she hadn't mentioned me once. Then, as if she suddenly remembered, she turned toward my table. "And of course, thank you to Margaret for being David's mom. I know this transition isn't always easy, and I hope you know that there's always room for family in our lives, as long as everyone understands their place." The words hung in the air like a challenge. A few people glanced in my direction, unsure whether to clap or not. The applause when it came was scattered and uncomfortable. Ashley smiled her brilliant bride smile and raised her glass higher. To family, both old and new. Everyone drank, but I could feel the tension at my table. Even Ashley's deaf great-aunt seemed to sense that something wasn't quite right. As the evening wore on, I became increasingly invisible. No one asked me to dance. No one sought me out for photos. When people wanted to meet the family, they were introduced to Linda and Ashley's siblings. But somehow I was always in the bathroom or getting another drink when those conversations happened. By the time the evening ended, I felt like a ghost at my own son's wedding. Present but not really there, acknowledged but not truly seen. As guests began to leave, I approached David to say goodbye. He was standing with Ashley, both of them glowing with happiness and champagne. "Mom, did you have a good time?" David asked, giving me a quick hug. Before I could answer, Ashley stepped forward. "Margaret, I hope you enjoyed everything. I know today was a lot, and I really appreciate how well you handled everything." There was that word again. Everything, as if my presence had been a problem that needed to be handled. "The wedding was beautiful, Ashley. You both looked very happy." "We are," she said, taking David's arm possessively. "And we're excited to start our new life together. Just the two of us. Building our own traditions." David nodded enthusiastically. "We're thinking about spending Christmas in Hawaii this year, just to do something completely different." Christmas, the holiday we had spent together every year since he was born. The morning ritual of opening stockings by the fireplace while drinking coffee and watching the snow fall outside. "That sounds wonderful," I said, and meant it. "I hope you have a beautiful time." Ashley looked surprised, as if she had expected me to object or beg to be included. "Really? You're not upset?" "Why would I be upset? You're adults starting your own family. It's exactly what you should be doing." I kissed David on the cheek and shook Ashley's hand politely. "Congratulations to both of you. I wish you nothing but happiness." As I walked away, I heard Ashley whisper something to David, and they both laughed. I didn't turn around to see what was so funny. I had more important things to think about than their private jokes. Monday morning, I had an appointment with my attorney. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzling, which felt appropriate for what I had to do. I sat in the parking lot of Morrison & Associates for 10 minutes before I could bring myself to walk inside. Not because I was having second thoughts, but because I needed to be absolutely certain this was a decision made from clarity, not pain. I had spent Sunday replaying every moment of the wedding, looking for signs that I had misunderstood, that Ashley's behavior had been stress rather than cruelty. but every memory only confirmed what I already knew. I wasn't losing a son to marriage. I had already lost him to manipulation. Robert Morrison had been our family attorney for 15 years. He had helped me navigate Richard's estate, reviewed my insurance policies, and drawn up my original will. He was one of the few people who knew exactly how much I was worth, $2.4 million. Not a fortune by some standards, but enough to change lives. Enough to pay off mortgages, fund educations, provide security. Enough that Ashley had probably calculated its value down to the penny. Margaret, Robert stood when I entered his office, genuine concern on his face. How was the wedding? You look tired. It was educational, I said, settling into the familiar leather chair across from his desk. Robert, I need to make some changes to my will. He pulled out my file, thick with years of careful planning. Of course. What kind of changes are we talking about? I want to remove David and Ashley completely. Everything that was designated for them goes elsewhere. Robert set down his pen and looked at me carefully. He had known David since he was a teenager. Margaret, that's a significant change. Can you tell me what's prompted this? I had practiced this conversation in my head, knowing Robert would ask. He wasn't just my attorney, he was my friend. And he cared enough to make sure I wasn't making decisions in anger that I would regret later, so I told him everything. The engagement party where I sat at the bar, the bridal shower I wasn't invited to, the dress shopping where I was an afterthought, and finally, the wedding where I was seated in the third row and thanked for being here today. She threw away my dress, Robert. She went into my hotel room, took the dress I had chosen for my son's wedding, and put it in the garbage. Then she explained to me that her mother's happiness was more important than mine. Robert listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. When I finished, he sat back in his chair. I understand why you're upset, Margaret. Anyone would be. But changing your will in response to a wedding conflict might be something you regret later. Maybe give yourself some time to process everything before making permanent decisions. This isn't about the wedding, Robert. The wedding just made it impossible to ignore what's been happening for 2 years. Ashley has systematically removed me from my son's life, and David has allowed it. They don't want me as family. They want me as a bank account. I opened my purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Ashley called me this morning. Robert raised an eyebrow as I unfolded the paper and read from my notes. She thanked me for being so understanding about everything, and then she said she and David have been talking about their future. They want to buy a house, and they were wondering if I could help with the down payment. She mentioned that they know I've been planning to leave David money anyway, so maybe I could consider it an advance on his inheritance. Robert's expression shifted. She actually said that, word for word. She also mentioned that David's been stressed about student loans, and since they're planning to start a family soon, any financial help I could provide would be so appreciated. She made it sound like helping them was my responsibility as David's mother. I refolded the paper and put it back in my purse. They're not asking for my blessing on their marriage or my advice on their future. They're asking for my money, and they expect me to be grateful for the opportunity to give it to them. Robert was quiet for a long moment, reviewing the notes he had taken. Where would you like the assets to go instead? Half to my sister Ellen. She's been more of a family to me these past 2 years than my own son has. The other half split between the literacy foundation Richard and I used to support and the scholarship fund at my old school. Robert nodded as he wrote, and if David contests the will, then he'll prove exactly who he's become. But I don't think he will. Ashley might want to, but David's not a fighter. He's a people pleaser, which is how we got into this mess in the first place. We spent the next hour going through every detail. Robert explained the legal language, made sure I understood the implications, and confirmed that this was truly what I wanted. One more question, Margaret. Do you plan to tell David about this change? I thought about that for a moment. Not yet. Maybe not ever. This isn't about punishing him. It's about accepting reality. If he comes to me someday because he genuinely wants a relationship with his mother, not my money, then we'll see. But I'm not going to dangle my inheritance like a carrot to try to buy his attention. As I signed the papers, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. For 2 years, I had been trying to earn my place in David's new life, accepting smaller and smaller roles in the hope that eventually Ashley would decide I was worth including. Now I didn't have to try anymore. Walking back to my car, my phone rang. Ashley's name appeared on the screen. Hi, Margaret. I hope you're doing well. I know yesterday was a lot, but David and I are just so grateful for how supportive you've been through everything. Her voice had that bright, fake quality it got when she wanted something. Thank you, Ashley. Is everything all right? Oh, absolutely. Everything's perfect. Actually, I was calling because David and I have been talking, and we have some exciting news to share. We found the most amazing house. It's in this gorgeous neighborhood with great schools, and we can just picture ourselves raising our kids there. I waited, knowing what was coming. The thing is, it's a little outside our budget right now. Not by much. But we were wondering if you might be able to help us with the down payment. I know it's a lot to ask, but David said you've always been so generous, and we thought maybe this could be an early wedding gift. The audacity was breathtaking. Less than 24 hours after throwing away my dress and humiliating me at their wedding, she was asking me to fund their dream house. How much are we talking about, Ashley? Well, ideally we'd need about $50,000, but honestly, any amount would be so helpful. We know how much you love David, and this would really be an investment in our future together. Your future grandchildren would grow up in this house. Future grandchildren. She was already using hypothetical babies as leverage. That's a significant amount, Ashley. I'll need to think about it. Of course, take all the time you need. Well, we do need to move quickly on the house. The market is crazy right now, but I know you'll make the right decision. After I hung up, I sat in my car and laughed. Actually laughed out loud in the parking lot of my attorney's office. Ashley had no idea that while she was calculating how much money she could extract from me, I had just signed papers ensuring she would never see a penny of it. The next few months were going to be very interesting indeed. I told Ashley I needed time to think about the house down payment, and she graciously gave me 3 days. On Thursday, she called with an update on their urgent situation. Margaret, I hate to pressure you, but the sellers received another offer. If we don't move by Monday, we'll lose the house. David is just devastated. This was supposed to be our forever home. I could hear David in the background, though his voice was muffled. Ashley covered the phone for a moment, then came back on the line. David says to tell you that he understands if you can't help right now. He doesn't want you to feel obligated. But Margaret, I can see how much this means to him. As his mother, I know you want him to be happy. The manipulation was masterful. She was positioning herself as David's protector while making me the obstacle to his happiness. You know what, Ashley? You're absolutely right. I do want David to be happy. Oh, thank goodness. I knew you'd understand. Should I give you our bank information? Or would you prefer to write a check? Actually, I'd like to take you both to dinner first. To celebrate. How about Saturday night? There was a pause. Dinner? Well, that's so sweet, but the bank needs the funds by... I'm sure we can handle the paperwork over dinner. I'll make reservations somewhere nice. My treat. After I hung up, I called my sister Ellen in Denver. Ellen, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest. Do you think I'm being vindictive? About what? I told her everything. The wedding, the will change, Ashley's demand for money. Ellen listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. Maggie, she said finally, using my childhood nickname, I've been waiting 2 years for you to wake up. That girl has been using you since day one, and David's been letting her. The question isn't whether you're being vindictive. The question is why it took you so long to protect yourself. Saturday night, I made reservations at Romano's, the upscale Italian restaurant where Richard and I had celebrated our anniversaries. David and Ashley arrived 15 minutes late, full of apologies about traffic. Ashley looked stunning, as always. She wore a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than most people spent on their monthly mortgage. David looked tired but hopeful, probably assuming this dinner meant I had agreed to fund their dream house. This place is beautiful, Margaret, Ashley gushed as we were seated. David told me this was special to you and Richard. It was. We came here for 23 years. The staff still asks about him. We ordered wine and appetizers, and Ashley regaled me with stories about house hunting, decorator ideas, and their plans for starting a family. We're thinking we'll wait maybe a year before trying for babies, she said, reaching over to squeeze David's hand. We want to get settled in the house first, you know? Make sure everything's perfect. That sounds very wise, I said. Planning ahead is so important. David smiled. Mom, I can't tell you how much this means to us. Ashley was right when she said you'd understand how important this is for our future. About that, I said, setting down my wine glass. I've given your request a lot of thought. Ashley leaned forward eagerly. David's expression was hopeful but nervous. I've decided not to give you the money for the house. The silence that followed was profound. Ashley's smile froze on her face. David blinked several times, as if he hadn't heard correctly. I'm sorry, Ashley said carefully. I won't be helping with the down payment or any other financial requests going forward. Ashley's composure cracked slightly. Margaret, I don't understand. You said you wanted David to be happy. I do want him to be happy, but I've realized that giving him money isn't the same thing as giving him happiness. In fact, it might be preventing it. David found his voice. Mom, what's going on? This isn't like you. Actually, David, this is exactly like me. The me I used to be before I started trying so hard to buy my way into your new life. Ashley's eyes were sharp now, calculating. Margaret, if this is about the wedding, I thought we had moved past that. I apologized for any misunderstandings. You apologized for misunderstandings, not for throwing away my dress, not for seating me in the third row, not for treating me like a stranger at my own son's wedding. David shifted uncomfortably. Mom, the wedding was stressful for everyone. Ashley meant exactly what she did, David. And so do I. I opened my purse and pulled out a small wrapped box. I did bring you a wedding gift, though. Ashley's face lit up slightly as she took the box. Maybe she thought I was just being dramatic, that the real gift was money disguised as sentiment. She unwrapped it carefully and opened the velvet box inside. It was a sterling silver picture frame. Elegant, but simple. It's lovely, Ashley said, though her disappointment was obvious. Thank you. Look at the inscription on the back. Ashley turned the frame over and read aloud. To David and Ashley. May you find the happiness that money can't buy. Love, Margaret. The message hit its target. Ashley's face flushed, and David looked confused. I don't understand what's happening here, David said. Mom, we're not asking you to buy our happiness. We just need help with the house. David, in the 2 years since you've been with Ashley, how many times have I helped you financially? He thought for a moment. I don't know. A few times? 11 times. I have a list. Your credit card debt when you moved in together, Ashley's car repairs, the engagement ring payment when you came up short, the wedding expenses that went over budget. Every time you've told me it was the last time you'd need help. Ashley's smile had vanished completely. Margaret, I think you're being unfair. Family helps family. You're right, Ashley. Family does help family. They also include family. They respect family. They don't throw family's belongings in the garbage and then ask for money 3 days later. The waiter approached to take our order, but Ashley waved him away. This is ridiculous, she said, her voice rising slightly. David, are you going to let her talk to me this way? David looked between us, clearly trapped. Mom, maybe we should discuss this privately. There's nothing private about this, David. Ashley made her feelings about me very public at your wedding. I'm simply responding in kind. Ashley stood up abruptly. I don't have to sit here and listen to this. David, we're leaving. David hesitated, looking at me with something I hadn't seen in 2 years. Uncertainty about Ashley. Actually, he said slowly, maybe we should hear Mom out. Ashley's mouth fell open. Excuse me? Sit down, Ashley. Please. For the first time since I'd known her, Ashley did something she didn't want to do. She sat down, but her posture was rigid with anger. David, I said gently, I love you. I've loved you every day of your life, and I always will. But I won't continue to fund a relationship with my own son. If you want me in your life, it has to be because you value me, not my bank account. David was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, what about the house? And that's when I knew. The house mattered more than I did. The money mattered more than our relationship. You'll figure it out, I said, standing up. You're both intelligent, capable adults. I have faith in you. I left money for the check and walked away from the table. As I reached the door, I heard Ashley's voice, no longer sweet or manipulative, but sharp with fury. This is insane, David. She's your mother. Make her give us the money. I didn't turn around to see David's response. But the fact that Ashley thought he could make me do anything told me everything I needed to know about how she really saw our family dynamic. On Monday morning, I transferred a significant portion of my savings to the Literacy Foundation. It felt like the best investment I'd ever made. 6 months passed before I heard from David again. 6 months of silence that I used to rediscover who I was before I became someone begging for scraps of my own son's attention. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since David was small. I joined a book club at the library where no one knew about my family drama. I volunteered at the Literacy Center and met the most interesting people. Immigrants learning English, adults returning to education, teenagers who just needed someone to believe in them. For the first time in years, I went to sleep without checking my phone for messages that never came. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon in March, David called. Mom, it's me. His voice sounded different, older, tired. Hello, David. How are you? Can we talk? In person? There are some things I need to tell you. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Neutral territory. David arrived first, and when I saw him through the window, my heart ached. He looked thin, worn down in a way that had nothing to do with physical health. Thank you for coming, he said as I sat down across from him. Of course. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then David took a deep breath. Ashley and I are getting divorced. I kept my expression neutral, though inside I felt a complex mix of sadness and relief. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? He looked at me directly for the first time. Really? I'm sorry you're in pain, David. I never wanted your marriage to fail. He nodded slowly. I know. I know you didn't. He paused, running his hands through his hair. Mom, I owe you an apology. A big one. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. I've been thinking about the wedding. About that dinner at Romano's. About everything that happened. And I realized something. Ashley was right about one thing. You did change after our wedding, but not in the way she said. I waited for him to continue. You stopped trying to buy my love, and I didn't know how to handle a relationship with you that wasn't based on what you could give me. The honesty in his voice was painful to hear, but it was real in a way our conversations hadn't been for years. What happened, David? The house fell through when you didn't give us the money. Ashley was furious, but I told her we'd figure something else out. We found a smaller place, took out a bigger mortgage, but it was never enough for her. Nothing was ever enough. He stared into his coffee cup. She started making comments about how your selfishness was affecting our future, how a real mother would want to help her son succeed, how her mother would never treat her the way you were treating me. And you believed her? I wanted to. It was easier than admitting that maybe I had been taking advantage of you for years. He looked up at me. When did I become someone who expected his mother to fund his lifestyle? When you fell in love with someone who saw me as a bank account instead of a person. David winced. She wasn't always like that. And in the beginning, Ashley seemed to genuinely want to get to know you. But after we got engaged, something changed. Or maybe I just started seeing her more clearly. What finally made you realize? Last month, Ashley found out about a trust fund her grandmother left her. She'd never mentioned it before. Said she forgot about it. $50,000. The exact amount she'd asked you for. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had the money all along. She had the money all along, he confirmed. When I asked her why she didn't use it for our house, she said she was saving it for something important, apparently. Our future home wasn't important enough to spend her own money on, but it was important enough to demand yours. I felt sad for David, seeing the betrayal in his eyes. There's more, he continued. After she got the trust fund, I thought things would improve between us, but they got worse. She started talking about how we needed to manage our relationship with you more strategically. She had this whole plan about staying close enough to ensure we'd inherit your estate, but not so close that we'd have to actually spend time with you. The calculated cruelty of it took my breath away. She said that? She said that. She also said that once we had kids, we could use your desire to be a grandmother to get more financial help. Grandparents always want to spoil their grandchildren, she said. I closed my eyes for a moment, processing the depth of Ashley's manipulation. David, I need to tell you something. I changed my will after your wedding. He nodded. I figured you might have. I don't blame you. You're not angry? How can I be angry? I chose a woman who saw your love as a transaction. I let her erase you from our wedding, our plans, our life. I participated in treating you like an ATM instead of my mother. We sat in silence for a while, both of us processing years of damaged trust. What do you want from me, David? What does this conversation mean? I want a chance to earn back a relationship with you. Not your money. I don't want your money. I want my mother back. The sincerity in his voice was something I hadn't heard in years. I'd like that too, I said softly. I know it won't be easy. I know I hurt you badly. But Mom, could we maybe start over? Could we try to build something real? I reached across the table and covered his hand with mine. We can try. Over the following months, David and I rebuilt our relationship slowly, carefully. He told me about the divorce proceedings, about Ashley's fury when she realized there would be no inheritance windfall, about his relief at being free from her constant manipulation. I told him about my painting, my volunteer work, about the life I had built in his absence. I also told him about my new will and why I had made those choices. I understand, he said, and I think it's the right decision. I need to prove I can be your son without expecting anything else from you. David started coming to dinner once a week. Not for money or favors, but just to talk. He brought flowers sometimes, or a book he thought I'd enjoy, small gestures that meant everything because they came from love, not obligation. 6 months after our coffee shop conversation, I called Robert Morrison. I want to make another change to my will, I told him. More changes? Margaret, you've been very thorough with your charitable giving. I want to add David back in, a modest amount. Nothing that would change his life dramatically, but enough to show that he's my son. What brought about this change? He earned it, not with grand gestures or dramatic apologies, but with consistency, with showing up, with proving that he wants a mother, not a benefactor. I never told David about restoring him to the will. That wasn't the point. The point was that I finally had my son back. Not the one who needed my money, but the one who needed my love. Ashley remarried within a year, to a man whose family owned a chain of luxury hotels. I heard through mutual friends that she was very happy with her new financial prospects. David eventually found someone too, a kindergarten teacher named Sarah who brought homemade cookies to our first meeting and asked to see photos of David as a child. She never once asked about my financial situation. At their simple courthouse wedding, I sat in the front row wearing a dress I had chosen myself. David's vows included a promise to honor the family he was born into as well as the one he was creating. And when he danced with me at their small reception, he whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me, Mom." "Thank you for coming back," I whispered in return. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the courage to lose you. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they find their way back on their own.